Hello, students. Today we will cover chapter 1 in Anatomy and Physiology, which is the introduction to the human body. The main learning objectives in this chapter is we'll review how life is defined, the major levels of organization of life. We'll understand what anatomy and physiology means, the different specialities under anatomy and physiology. We'll study the different organ systems. There's 11 organ systems, their main functions. We'll study the most important concept called homeostasis and how homeostasis is maintained by either positive or negative feedback. We'll study some anatomical terms. We'll study body membranes and body cavities and some basic anatomical terminology. So, how is life defined? What are the characteristics or properties of life? So, we've studied in any introductory biology class that life evolved from a common ancestor, and these are the main kingdoms. In prokaryotes, we have bacteria and archaea, and in eukaryotes, we have the plants, animals, fungus, and protista. So, all living things are made up of cells. Sometimes they are unicellular, sometimes they are multicellular. All living organisms will reproduce. They need to metabolize. So, this refers to all the chemical reactions of anabolism and catabolism, all to survive. How do they obtain energy and use it? All living organisms will maintain a stable internal environment, constant environment. It's called homeostasis. All living organisms have hereditary material in the form of nucleic acids, DNA, that is passed on to the offsprings. All living organisms are very responsive to the environment. They will respond to the environment. For example, if um, you know, birds will fly, at a stimuli, like when you throw a stick at them, or like flowers will open in response to sunshine. So they are highly responsive. All living organisms will grow and develop. The one cell will become two cells. We are constantly undergoing mitosis and meiosis and developing. And all living organisms will adapt to change. This is called evolution. So, all these processes have to work together in a very fine tuned manner in order to sustain life. So, these are the main properties of life. So, anatomy and physiology, the basic definition of anatomy is the study of structures and also the location of the organ in the body. What is it made up of? Where is it located? And what are the associated structures? So, that is what anatomy is. For example, let's say you're studying the structure of the heart. First, you'll need to know the location of the heart in the body, in the mediastinum. What is the structure? There are 4 chambers in the heart, and there's all these vessels and the valves and the cardiac muscle. So, all these structures fall under anatomy. When we go into how they function, how the contraction happens, the pacemaker cells, the action potential, and how the contraction happens, the systole and diastole, and all of those will come under physiology. Usually, the central dogma is that the structure will dictate the function. Many a time when structure is lost, the function is also lost. Why should you study anatomy and physiology? See, it's basic for anybody in the healthcare field. You need to know this. It's like fundamentals. Uh, if you are a car mechanic, you have to know the different parts of the car and what they do, so that when the car is damaged or there's a repair in the car, then the technician can fix it. Very similarly, anybody in the healthcare business should know how the human body functions under healthy conditions, so that when trouble comes, when the patient is sick, you are correctly able to diagnose it and treat it or manage the disease. Oh, this is very interesting. Andreas Vesalius, he is considered to be the father of modern anatomy. So he lived in the 15th century, and he wrote one of the most influential books in anatomy, which is very detailed and it was correct. It is called On the Fabric of the Human Body. There's also several interesting stories about how he used to pay grave diggers in order to get fresh bodies for doing his dissections. Let's talk about some of the subdivisions in anatomy and physiology. When you're studying the surface structure, or like what you can see, it's called gross anatomy. The things that you can't see, you need a microscope, like a compound microscope, an electron microscope. So if you can't see it with your naked eye and you need to use a microscope, it is called microscopic anatomy. So we have gross anatomy and microscopic anatomy. Some of the main subdivisions under gross anatomy is surface anatomy, where you'll study the external or superficial anatomical structures. If you're studying a certain region, it is called regional anatomy. Like, let's say you're studying like the thoracic region. If you're studying one complete system, all the organs, like cardiovascular system, then you'll study the heart, the vessels, blood. It will be called as a systemic anatomy. If you're studying the development from conception to death, it's called developmental anatomy. When, when you're applying the knowledge, applied anatomy is similar to clinical anatomy, where you'll apply the knowledge of anatomy to uh, diagnose and treat diseases. In microscopic anatomy, when you're studying cells, it's called cytology. All the cells, their structures in the cell, like mitochondria, chloroplast, and how they are functioning. So, not functioning, all the structures is cytology. When you're studying tissues, it's called histology. Some of the subdivisions in physiology, when you're studying the function of a cell, it is cell physiology. A specific organ will be a special physiology, like a cardiologist will study the heart. When you're studying the whole system, is systemic physiology. When you're studying the diseases of the organs, is called pathology, pathological physiology. So life is organized from the simple to the most complex. So that is called the hierarchy of life, the different levels of organization of life. So the smallest unit of matter, one of the smallest unit would be atoms, which are made up of electrons and neutrons and protons. There's more atomic particles. However, they come together to form molecules. So higher up the hierarchy you go, it gets more and more complex, and there's more added emergent properties with every level. So atoms come together to form molecules. They will come together to form the different organelles in a cell. The different organelles will come together to form one individual uh, working cell. Similar cells come together to form tissue. Different tissues will come together to form an organ. And all the organs, not all the organs, a bunch of organs and their associated structures will form an organ system. And when you put all the organ systems together, you'll have the organism. So there are 11 main organ systems that you'll be studying in A and P. The first 6 will be covered in AP1, and the next will be covered in AP2. So we have the integumentary, skeletal, muscular, nervous, endocrine, cardiovascular, lymphatic, respiratory, digestive, urinary, and reproductive. So we'll briefly see what each organ system comprises of and the main function. So the largest organ system is the integumentary system, which includes the skin and all the accessory organs that are found in the skin, like hair and nails and sweat glands. The main function of skin is to protect you from the external environment and to maintain homeostasis. So it plays a huge role in maintaining your body temperature. And our skin is studded with sense receptors. So they provide sensory information. Like when the wind blows, because of the receptors that are found in the skin. Skeletal system is made up of the bones that build your body, the cartilages, the ligaments that hold the bones together, and the bone marrow. So, bones provide support and protection for all the body organs. For example, your skull is protecting your brain. It is also a reservoir of calcium in your body. And in the bone marrow is where hematopoiesis happens. That is bone marrow, blood forms. So it's the factory for making blood. The muscular system, the organs are all the skeletal muscles and the tendons that will attach the muscle to the bone. The main function of the skeletal muscles is for your movement and locomotion. It also provides protection and support. Like, for example, all your abdominal muscles are protecting your delicate GI tract, your stomach, and all the organs in the abdominal cavity. Your muscles is also playing a huge role in maintaining your body temperature because by cellular respiration, breaking down of food to form ATP energy, it will generate heat. So here we have the nervous system, which includes the brain, the spinal cord, the brain, the spinal cord, and all the nerves that come out of the spinal cord. They are called peripheral nerves, and also your sense organs, your eyes, your ears, your tongue, your nose. The main function of the system is responding to a stimuli, and it will coordinate all the activities of all the other organ systems. So it is the master system. It provides and interprets sensory information about external conditions. So all the information, let's say you touch something hot. So the stimuli will be perceived by the receptors. The information will shoot up your arm. Sometimes it's processed in the spinal cord, or many a time it'll go to the brain, and the brain will process that information and it'll send out a response through the effector. The endocrine system is made up of the pituitary gland. It's in your like in your brain. It'll hang off the bottom of the brain. Your thyroid gland, your pancreas, your suprarenal glands on top of the kidneys, your gonads, your testes and your ovaries. So the main function of the endocrine system is to direct long time changes in other organs. It will play a role in maintaining your metabolism of your body. It controls structural and functional changes during development. The cardiovascular system comprises of the heart, the blood, and the blood vessels. So the main function of the cardiovascular system is to take oxygen and nutrients to every cell in your body. So the blood is what flows in the arteries and veins. So we are going to distribute blood, water, minerals, nutrients, and also remove all the toxic metabolic waste from the tissues. It is also distributing the heat, and this also plays a huge role in maintaining your body temperature. The lymphatic system, the organs, it includes the spleen, thymus, lymphatic vessels and lymph nodes, and also tonsils. They are the policemen of your body. They will defend the body against infection and disease. And there's a little bit of spillover blood from the arteries. So they are going to like suck up all the spillover blood in your tissues, and it'll decant it back into the vascular system. The respiratory system includes the nasal cavities, the sinuses, your larynx or your voice box, your trachea, your bronchi, lungs, and alveoli. So this is where the gas exchange happens. So the main function of the respiratory system is to absorb oxygen in the lungs, and then the blood will carry the oxygen to every cell in your body. So it's providing oxygen to the cells of your body, and it gets rid of the carbon dioxide. And since the voice, larynx is also included in the respiratory system, it plays a huge role in providing phonation, that is sound for communication. The digestive system. So digestion starts in your mouth. So it includes the oral cavity with the teeth, your tongue. The back of your oral cavity would be your pharynx. So, and then the food travels down the esophagus, it lands in the stomach, then it enters the small intestine, then the large intestine, and then out through the anus, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas, and also your salivary glands are accessory glands. So the main function of the digestive system is to process and digest the food, absorb the nutrients, and get rid of the waste. Urinary system is made up of the kidneys, the ureters, the urinary bladder, and the urethra. Main function is to excrete the waste product. It'll cleanse the blood. So all the blood will, as it runs through the kidneys, it'll filter, and all the toxins will be gotten rid of. It plays a huge role in maintaining your blood volume. So it controls the water balance by regulating the volume of urine produced. It also plays a huge role in maintaining electrolyte concentration in your blood, the pH concentration. The male and the female reproductive system. In the male, the organs are the testes, and then all these structures and tubes, it'll go through the epididymis, and then ductus deferens, seminal vessels, the prostate glands, the penis, the scrotum. So all these are many of them, like you can see, external genitalia. The main function is to make the sperm and play a role in sexual intercourse. The female reproductive organs are the ovaries, the fallopian tube, uterus, vagina, labia, clitoris, and in addition, so the woman makes the egg, carries the baby to term, and also plays a role in lactation. So both sex organs will make the sperm and the egg, and during sexual intercourse, they will, if fertilized, the female's reproductive organs is built to sustain the baby, and then after the baby is born, to nourish the baby. One of the most important concepts you have to understand in this chapter is homeostasis. Homeo means same, stasis means state. So all the 11 body systems will work together to maintain a stable internal environment. So that's what homeostasis is. So, for example, your body temperature has to be just right, 98.6. Your fluid balance, the pH of your blood, everything has to be held at a constant level. Sometimes homeostasis is intrinsic. That means the organ or tissue or the cell itself will play a role in maintaining homeostasis. Sometimes it has to be controlled either by the nervous or the endocrine system, and then it will be called as extrinsic. There are two main types of homeostatic regulation. One of them is positive feedback and negative feedback. A good example for negative feedback is maintenance of body temperature. So 37 degrees Celsius is the normal body temperature. So in negative feedback, the response of the effector will reduce the stimulus or negate the stimulus. It will oppose any change. For example, if it's we are taking the homeostasis of body temperature, our body will do its best to oppose any kind of change to the body temperature. It's very similar to the heat thermostat that we have at home. You know, when it's very cold, like today, the heaters will kick in. The sensors will pick up that signal and the heater will kick in. If it's very hot, hot summer day, then the AC kicks in. So, very similarly, our body also has, by negative feedback control, it will maintain the body temperature. See, if your body gets very hot, you've seen that you sweat a lot, and when the sweat evaporates, it'll cool your skin down. So here in this picture, this is normal body temperature, but for some reason, maybe some you get a fever or like you are infected, and the body temperature rises. There are a lot of temperature receptors in your skin and also the hypothalamus in your brain. These receptors are going to pick up the signal that something is not right. Your body is hot. So that information goes to the control center in the brain, and then the brain will send a command through the effectors to the sweat glands in your skin, commanding the sweat glands to sweat. So when the sweat leaves the body and evaporates, it will cool the skin down. The blood vessels will also dilate, and then your body, thereby restoring the normal body temperature. So the stimulus is when the body temperature exceeds 37 degrees Celsius. The sensors are the nerve cells with nerve endings in skin and brain. The signal, it goes to the brain processes the signal, and it sends out a command to the effector asking the sweat glands to sweat, thereby maintaining the normal body temperature. Another good example is maintenance of blood insulin levels in correlation to blood sugar. In positive feedback, the end products of the action will cause more of the action to happen in a feedback loop. Thereby, this will amplify the original action. Let me give you an example. Here, there is a artery. Let's say an accident happened and it got nicked. So there's a break or tear in the blood vessels. So as soon as there's a tear, you can't afford to lose uh, blood or waste blood. So what happens is this cut, um, those chemicals will actually trigger clotting factors. So these clotting factors will trigger the platelets that will adhere to it's called blood coagulation cascade. So these chemicals that are released because of the cut and the platelets jumping into action will release more chemicals. So it's like a cascade. And this will keep on happening until the cut is sealed and the loss of blood stops. So here, the damage of blood vessels will cause a release of chemicals. These chemicals, in turn, will trigger blood clotting factors. Those clotting factors, in turn, will release more and more and more chemicals until clotting happens and the blood hemorrhage stops. So, in this positive feedback mechanism, the end products of the action will cause more of that action to happen. Another good example is childbirth. See, when a woman is in labor, the the nerves will send a message to the brain that it's time for delivery, and the brain is going to produce oxytocin for contractions. So here the baby is birthing, so it's like crowning. So the body will keep on making more and more and more oxytocin until delivery happens. So this is an example of positive feedback in for maintaining homeostasis. Very important here. These are the anatomical terms that you have to know. Anytime, so this is very important for perfect communication among the healthcare professionals. So when you are talking about the patient, you're assuming that the patient is in anatomical position. So they are erect, face forward, hands at the sides, toes forward, palms forward. So this is the correct anatomical position. So this will be used as a point of reference during communication. So it is assumed that the patient, when you are referring to the patient, that you're talking about the patient in anatomical position. Supine would be lying down face up, and prone is face down. Let's put some anatomical names for the different regions of the body. Cranium refers to the skull. Facial refers to the face. Otis, mouth. Mental, chin. Axilla, armpit. Brachium is arm. Antecubital is front of elbow. Antebrachial or forearm. Your wrist is carpus. Your thumb is pollex. Your palm is palmar. Your fingers are digits. Your thigh is femoral. Your knee is patella. Front of your feet is screws. Ankle is tarsus. Your toes are also called digits. Your big toe is called hallux. Anything pertaining to the eye is called ocular. Your cheeks is buccal. Nose is nasal. Otis or oris is ear. Neck cervical. Chest is thoracic. Breast is mammary. Stomach is abdominal. Hip is coxal. Navel region is umbilical. Pelvis is the pelvic region. Your groin region is pubic. Your thigh is femoral. So this is the front or anterior part of the body. In the posterior or back of your body, you can see Again, cranial or cephalic. Shoulder is acromial. Olecranon is the back of your elbow. Dorsal is your back. Lumbar is your lower back. Sacral, that's your sacral bone is there. Gluteal is your bottom. Femoral, popliteal is the back of your knee. Your calf is sural. Calcaneal is your heel. Plantar is your sole or your foot. The best way to master all this terminology is by writing it down. I'll post some practice pictures in your study guide. Again, for communication and for quick diagnosis, we must be able to tell because there's so much happening in the abdominal region. So they have divided the abdomen into quadrants. So the quadrants, so one is right in the center, it's called sagittal plane. And then the cross-sectional line goes through your navel, your belly button. So if you divide the abdominal region into 4 quadrants, one thing to note here is this is again in reference, it's the patient's point of view. So when you're looking at the patient, your right is actually the patient's left, and vice versa. So we have the right upper quadrant, left upper quadrant, right and left lower quadrants. So you have to know the quadrants, and you also have to know the different organs that are found in the different quadrants. Right upper quadrant, we have the liver, parts of the stomach, duodenum, your right kidney, your transverse colon, and the adrenal gland. Again, for more details, you can also divide the abdominal pelvic region into 9 regions. So we have the right and the left hypochondriac region. Hypo means under, chondriac means cartilage. We have the right and the left lumbar region. So this is the lumbar vertebrae will be here. Umbilical is the navel region where your belly button is. Above, epi means on top of. Hypo means under. Gastric region, above the your stomach and all your intestines, and below, lower part. Right and left iliac region. So this is your iliac bone will be here. So we have right and left. Again, in these 9 quadrants, you have to know the different organs. For example, the right hypochondriac region has the liver, kidneys, right kidney, gallbladder, and small intestine. Why do you have to know it? So that, let's say, a female patient comes with pain in the let's say, right iliac region, right? So you can immediately not diagnose, at least suspect that the patient might be suffering from a disorder in these 4 regions here. Maybe it's appendix, right? So it's for a quick diagnosis. And then you can direct them to the correct, type of diagnostic next steps can be decided quickly. And treatment can be also offered quickly. Directional terminology in anatomy. So when a patient is in anatomical position, anything that is so these terminology are like opposites. When there is superior, there'll be inferior. So anything pertaining to the top of your body, your cranium, is called superior. Towards the bottom is called inferior. It's also called cranial or caudal. The front of the body is anterior. The back is posterior or dorsal. Anterior or ventral, posterior or dorsal. If it is right in the center or midline of the body, let's say there's an imaginary line that goes down from that like through the nose, your neck, and right through your navel in the midline is called medial. Anything away from the midline is called lateral. A set of terms that are used mainly for your arms and legs are proximal and distal. So this is the point of origin. See, your shoulder joint is the point of origin of your arms, right? So if the area that you want to describe is near that, it's called proximal. Away from the point of origin is called distal. Very similarly, you can use proximal and distal in your legs also. For example, your knee is distal compared to your thigh. And these two terminologies, superficial and deep, they'll play a role when for dissection. So it can either be a very superficial cut or a deep cut. External body features would be outside, internal is inside. So these are directionality terms. So sectional anatomy, these are very important because when you're doing MRI scans, you have to know a point of reference as to how the different sections were made. So when you say plane, it's a three-dimensional axis. A section is a slice that's parallel to a plane. And this is used to visualize internal body organization and structures, especially people who are uh, trying to understand MRI scans or PET or CT scans. We have to know this. So the frontal plane or coronal plane will divide the body to a front half and a back half. A cross-sectional or transverse plane will cut the body into a top and a bottom. A sagittal plane will divide the body to a left side and a right side. So these are the three main planes. Body cavities. The human body is highly organized. There are like these specific chambers to protect every delicate organ of the body. So these cavities or spaces will contain all the delicate internal organs or viscera. There are two main cavities. The dorsal cavity, dorsal means back, right? Includes the cranial cavity that protects the brain and the vertebral cavity that protects the vertebra, the spinal cord. Vertebral cavities protect the spinal cord. So here in this flow chart here, you can see how the different body cavities are classified. So for the ventral or the anterior body cavity, we have the thoracic cavity and the abdominopelvic cavity. So thoracic cavity and the abdominopelvic cavity. In the thoracic cavity, we have the right pleural cavity, the left pleural cavity, and the mediastinum. So this will have the right lung, the left lung, and then the mediastinum will, here there'll be trachea and esophagus, but here in the mediastinum is the cardiac, the heart, the pericardial cavity. Moving on to the abdomen, the abdominopelvic cavity is made of the abdominal cavity and the pelvic cavity. The abdominal cavity will contain many of the digestive organs and glands here. And the pelvic cavity will contain the urinary bladder, reproductive organs, and a part of the digestive system. So these are the different cavities of the body that protects the organs or viscera. Serous membranes also are very important. They will surround the important organs. The membrane that sticks to the organ is called visceral membrane. And the membrane that lines the cavity is called parietal. So the gap, the area between the visceral and the parietal will make a cavity for a lubricant. So serous membranes are membranes that line internal body cavities. Pleural cavity Pericardial cavity and peritoneum are the serous membranes that line the pleura. Pericardia is the heart, and the peritoneum is your abdominal, that protects the abdominal cavity. So if you take the heart, visceral pericardium is the membrane that's sticking to the heart. The parietal pericardium will stick to the cavity, and it forms a pericardial cavity with lubricant in it. Similarly, in your abdomen, we'll have the in the abdomen we'll have the parietal and visceral peritoneum, and for your lungs we'll have the parietal and visceral pleura. So there ends the first chapter. I hope that helped.